communicator. That's what I was born to do, apparently. But anyway, fate had other things in mind for me. Um, I um, I suppose the most relevant bit to my background, because it's long and varied, is that for a short time I was both an MP and a minister. I was elected when Tony Blair was the prime minister. So surprisingly, he was called a Blair's babe. I know it's hard to remember those days, but however, and then suddenly lost when Gordon Brown was the. I lost my seat when Gordon Brown was the prime minister. But during those years, I worked particularly in the Northern Ireland office. But what I did was I worked with the housing department. And in those days, well, certainly very much so in those days, the British government that was based in the UK, in London, actually ran housing in Northern Ireland. So I was really involved in the nitty gritty, and I think that's where I obviously got the basics for kind of where I am now. But when I lost my seat, I went into communications, in transport and development, and then since I can't remember, 5 years, Anna, I've been working with you at Hera Communications, where I've been involved with various SME builders, funders, and working as a kind of link. I'm called Director of Public Policy. So basically anything that involves infrastructure and services, and the government and regional bodies is really where I do my hopefully best work. Um, but in terms of what uh, uh, we've been talking about just very quickly earlier, I have played a part in what's happened, but it is a small part. But I think what we've managed to do, both with Edwin on this forum, also other organisations, and we have to mention the FMB and the National House Builders Federation, and all the organisations that have been batting on all of these issues. What we've managed to do at HERA with Edwin and the new all-party group is to pull everything together and focus it. So we've been able to use all of the good work that's gone before, as well as what we're doing now, pull it together and really get in the ear of the new, well, relatively new ministers now, so that they understand how important the SME sector is, um, how very much it sadly has declined, but kind of almost been, in my words, I think ignored or passed over uh, in previous years. But I think what we've all managed to do is to bring the importance and the possibility of what we can actually do with this SME sector to benefit the government, because they want to get their building figures right for the end of their term, and it will benefit SMEs. And that's what our focus, I think, Anna and everybody that's involved with the APG would agree. So it hasn't just been us, but what we've been able to do is to focus and literally get in their ear. And that's why what I was impressed by some of the announcements today, well, yesterday really, but have really broken today, has been using our words. And in fact, some of those phrases are just out of Edwin's mouth. So we've batted and managed to sort of say it in enough forums, in enough places and in enough ears, that they're actually using our words, which shows to me that they get it. They get all of those issues that you've struggled with and are struggling with, and they do want to try and do something about it. Now, it's not the end of it, because what we've got to do is make sure they stick to their word, as all governments, but also that we don't lose any of that focus when the bill comes into place at the end of this session. So the consultations which are coming off of these most recent announcements, we've really got to get our words back in the mix and make sure the people, the MPs and the peers in our APPG are still reiterating all of those issues, all of those words, and we don't lose any of it after the consultation and throughout the bill. Because what we've really got to influence is the guidelines that come out as a result of the bill, because they've got to be workable and they've got to work for you. They've also got to work, hopefully, for planning departments as well. So this is, we've managed to get them to listen, but now we've got to make them focus and make it work. So now, if you like, I think this is probably an even more important stage now, because we can't let it go. Words don't build houses, do they? So what we've got to do is turn it into proper actions. So that's our next step, Edwin, really.
Well, thank you. And I think from my perspective, what I heard this morning in terms of biodiversity net gain being removed for smaller developments, I think up to 9 units, is a huge. I don't know if Joe Jelly is on the call. I think he probably is, from Aspen Homes.
Edwin, I've got Roger Jelly here.
You have? Okay. Roger, good morning. Well, you're
standing in for the boy.
Well, you're standing in for your son. Well, isn't that amazing? Hi, Roger. Well, I do know the impact of biodiversity net gain had on your site in Guildford, and it was a small scheme, and it's unbelievable what Joe and obviously Roger, his father, had to incur in terms of cost. They did it, and they've done a fantastic job, but it really penalised them so much more so than a volume house builder. So I think that's a huge shift forward. And also there was going to be a levy, or scheduled to be a levy, which I now believe the government are holding back on in terms of the Grenville, and that would be a tax levied on properties, which I believe now up to 50 units. And for the smaller SMEs, they're realising that that's a very unfair tax for SME house builders that typically are not building high-rise apartments. So I think it's wonderful that, and it's not my voice, I've actually built mine around your good selves over the last 5 odd years, because those of you that joined this forum on the 24th of March 2020 at the start of lockdown, there were 16 of us. We now have, thanks to me involving Anna from Hero Communications, who I'd call my partner in crime, who does all the clever, smart, slick stuff. We've grown this. We've got over 240 SME builders now part of this forum. And it is unique because it's informal. There's no membership. People don't pay. And it's a broad church. I've got SME builders on the call building 5 units to 500 or 1,000 units. So the likes of John Anderson, CEO of Allison Homes, comes on the call. Rob Boughton from Thacum Homes, I think Adam Thacum, who's one of his directors, is on the call today. And what's wonderful from my perspective is that you're all trying to help each other. So Thacum Homes, a great example, are looking at how they can release land to support smaller SME house builders. John Anderson from Allison Homes, he goes out of his way when I ask him to help a smaller builder and to see what we can do. So this is a community, this is an ecosystem that is unique in the industry. And we've got suppliers, manufacturers, and I'm going to cite just one, Velux, Trevor Smith from Velux, another business, a multi-billion-pound business that goes out of their way now to focus on SME house builders in the UK and to help you guys punch above your weight. So there's just a few examples which for me encourages me as be as passionate to be a combination of all your voices that I bring to government through my role as APPG. So I think that's been enough. I think you've all not come to listen to me. You've come to hear from 2 very, very distinguished guest speakers. One of them God knows. He met me in London. I interrogated him for an hour and a half over breakfast, and he's just still decided that he's happy to
broadcast in the various different ways and use it for future, because I can't have that.
Steve Lewis, could you silence your... Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
So could Steve Lewis, could you...
Yeah.
Could we put you on mute?
Okay.
Could someone mute him otherwise? Sorry, he's from a bank. They never listen, do they? Steve Lewis, we need you to be on mute, my friend. Thank you. Right, Colin, not sure. We both don't remember what brought us about. I think it was me seeing a picture of a much younger version of you and on some quality awards and thinking it could be useful for us to get together, and we did. And I just felt I was so inspired by you, a gentleman of the industry, without question. I think I did check with Stuart Baisley whether you were just a good salesman when I met you, and he said no, he's a genuine article. He's a decent chap. So firstly, thank you for coming on the call. It's really your background and your story for me is a bit special. I think you can help some of the smaller SME builders that want to grow, to look at the things that they could do. And just really, and I know you're not going to say this is the only way you can do it, because there are many ways in which you can be successful as an SME, but I'd really very much like if you give a little bit of background for your involvement in Westbury, how you've moved away from working for basically a FTSE 100 type company to then setting up as a one-man show to what you've built today, and how you've gone about it, some of the challenges you've incurred, some of the things that have kept you going, and perhaps your thoughts, and it's your thoughts only, on where the market is today and where you think it will be going forward. I know that's a broad brief, but perhaps a little bit about you, your background, from where you started to where you are today. So over to you, Colin, and thank you again for joining the call.
Okay, thank you very much, Edwin. I really appreciate that. Since you asked the question earlier, I think I do recall now why we met, and that was because I was invited to number 10 to make some representations on behalf of SME house builders. And,
yes, it was.
I
You're
think you saw
absolutely
a
right.
picture.
Yep.
I think that's it. But anyway, the reason really for joining today, Edwin's request, and I really do appreciate the opportunity, is to talk about Lioncourt Homes, because I do think Lioncourt is very different from the rest of the industry, and I'm hoping I can put a few pointers over, maybe to give you some thoughts about how your businesses could develop or elsewhere. But the main thing is, I think, for your businesses, you're the entrepreneurs, you drive it, you're integral to every decision that's made within your own businesses. But at Lioncourt, I take more of a helicopter view, and I wasn't able to, and I'm not able to do some of the things that you do. So I had to engage a very strong team. I've got very good directors, I've got very good senior managers and people coming up through the business. And I'll talk about a bit more about that later. The other thing that is really different is I've got a range of investors. So instead of having one or two investors, I've got 80 odd, 85, I think, at the last count. And that's given me the ability to have a revolving credit facility within our business because of the strength of the balance sheet, which again is probably different to most. So without going a bit further, I think the way of summarizing what I've done is to build what is a mini PLC, because what I've got is a small company with a number of investors. I need those investors for their equity, but my business is run just like a major PLC. So that's the bit that perhaps you could think about as I go through maybe a bit about the Lioncourt story. So where I came from originally is I worked, as Edwin said, for PLC Westbury. We were the 6th largest house builder in the UK. I joined as a junior at Westbury, but I rose up through the ranks and I ended up being on the board of Westbury, and we had 9 divisions, and the 9 MDs reported through to me, and we turned over just under £1 billion. So my career is almost in reverse, in that I started with a really large company, and then I've got a small one, so it's quite a strange situation. But in 2005, November 2005, Persimmon came along. They made an offer for Westbury, and the rest of the board were all made redundant. But Persimmon were very good to me. They appointed me as regional chairman of the southern half of their business, which is a position I held for exactly a week. And I decided that I always wanted to have my own house building business, and I thought this is the perfect time. I've got a bit of a payoff from Westbury, and I needed to prove myself all over again at Persimmon, and I thought I just don't want to do that, so I resigned. And I must say I regretted it. On the Saturday morning, I wondered what the hell I'd done when I sat round my dining room table without any income and nothing, basically. But I think, I had to think differently about how to set up a business, because I don't confess to have all the skills that entrepreneurs have in our business to drive it. So, and I didn't have enough money. I had enough money to probably buy 1 or 2 plots of land, 5, 10 plots maybe. But I didn't know that business. What I know about, because of my history, is all about. So I don't know what happened there.
Can we silence somebody? Anna, is it possible to silence everybody apart from Colin?
Is that okay now? Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds like it's okay. So I didn't know about the smaller businesses. I knew about economies of scale and buying big sites. So I approached a couple of investors, and they were keen to support me and put them both in place. But then I thought again, and I thought they've got deeper pockets than I have. So if it comes to a crunch, and decisions need to be made that I'm not happy about, then they will always have the upper hand. So I thought, well, I don't really like that thought, and it doesn't feel like I'm running my own business if somebody else has that control. So I made an approach to Goodbody stockbrokers in Dublin. And I went along to the stockbrokers and I said, can I make presentations to your investors or your clients to raise capital from them? And they said, oh, no, sir, you don't actually understand how this works. You can't make a presentation to our clients. So I said, well, can I make it to you? So I made the presentation to the stockbrokers, and they said, okay, fine, we'll put some investors in front of you. So I met with individuals and I met with groups of 10, and out of that I got 80 plus investors to invest within Lioncourt. And the beauty about having all that investment is that gave me the ability to borrow from the banks. So the banks were bending over backwards to lend money to us because we had the substance of the investors behind, just like, as I say, a major PLC. So with that in hand, we bought our first site for 141 homes, which is quite amazing. And some of the PLCs were wondering where the hell we'd come from, really, to be able to do that. But that's how that started. But our banking arrangements then, I mean, if I go back to day one, I couldn't get any bank funding. I had to put the house on the line if I wanted to get any funding. And I realized, I felt I was really important as a board member, a PLC director. I thought there was no one more important than a guy on the board of a PLC. But clearly, when I went to see the banks, they said, well, you've got no startup experience, you've got no knowledge about how to run a small business. So that was all thrown out the window. But when I got the investors in place, it then gave me the ability to get scheme funding. And then over the years, as the banks have understood the basis of the investment that we've got in the business, then that's when we moved to the revolving credit facility, and that's what we've had ever since for the last 10 years, I suppose. The other issues that are really important to me are culture. I'm absolutely passionate about our business, and I'm passionate about giving everyone in the organisation the ability to make their own decisions. So throughout the organisation, people at the lowest level make their own decisions. And we make sure that if something goes wrong, that we don't bawl them out, we support them. I have an expression that we close ranks to all work together to make that happen. Quality in everything we do is really important to me. The street scenes, the way our product looks, everything on site, I'm really engaged in. But there's a level of engagement in this company that I've never experienced before. I never had that in a PLC, but everyone within Lioncourt is really driven and motivated to work with us. And one of the things I did, because the investor base that I've got, that I did about 3 years ago, was introduce growth shares to everybody. So everybody in the Lioncourt business is a shareholder in our company. And that was a message I thought was going to be difficult to sell to our investors, because I asked them to give up 7.5% of their investment to put in a fund that I could use for all the employees. Without exception, they all saw the logic of doing that, and the fact that if the employees were all motivated to grow the business, then they would benefit. So they all gave up 7.5% of their wealth, in effect, to be able to give that to the employees, and that's had a fantastic motivation for everybody. And so we've got criteria every year. Someone's got pay review time. We allocate more shares, but people have to be here for 12 months, and then there's a seniority grading. Senior people get more than some of the junior people, but forklift truck drivers, labourers, etc., throughout our business are all shareholders in the Lioncourt business. I could never have done that if it was just me investing. So the broad spectrum's done that with the investors. So just so you know, geography, we go up to Stoke, we're down as far as Gloucester, we go over to Shrewsbury to the west, and to the east we're into Coventry, and we wrap round to Oxford. So it's like a diamond shape in the middle of the country. We've got 2 divisions. We've got a home building division. We're going to do about 250 homes this year. And we've got a strategic land division. Within the strategic land division, that I always think is counter-cyclical to what's going on in the housing market. We've got some very large sites. Anything up to 200 homes, we transfer to the homes business. Anything above 200, we sell in the open market, and we've sold 800 homes to Taylor plot site to Taylor Wimpey, 400 plot site to Vistry. Recently, we've sold a 660 plot site at Kingston Bagpues to Barrett Redrow and Sovereign Homes. And tomorrow, or possibly next week, we're launching the biggest site since we formed the company. And that's a house we've got an outline, as a site we've got an outline consent on, with section 1 and 6 in place for 2,500 homes. I could never have done that without the investment that I've got behind it. So that's a very big site. So this coming year, we'll probably do 250 home sales. 500 homes is where we expect to be within the 5-year period. I've got a 4.5-year short-term land bank and about 6,000 strategic plots. So that's 7,000 plots within our overall portfolio. Currently operating off 6 sites, hoping to get to 8 within the next couple of months and rising from that. And I think pretty much that's it. I mean, I think probably as an overview, I was just trying to pull in things that might be different from some of your businesses. I feel we're different. You know, I've seen the number of SMEs within this country deteriorate drastically, and I'm sort of surprised that other entrepreneurs that maybe haven't got the capital, but they've got the know-how, haven't followed my or Lioncourt's example of trying to pull people in to grow a business. But I hope at least it's provoked a few thoughts and maybe how you could expand your businesses. But generally, I'm happy to take any questions today, or alternatively, if you want a private conversation outside the meeting, equally that's fine. So anyway, I hope you found it interesting. I think we're different. for a different organisation generally.
Colin, from me, I listened and we spoke over breakfast in a very similar way, and I have no doubts that you've provoked some great thoughts in our audience, and I think it would be unfair of me not to give them the opportunity to ask you some questions. So thank you for being so open, so honest about what you've done, the journey you've come on in terms of that. Could I hands up, because it's difficult for me to see at the moment, and Anna, you might be able to help me. Has anyone got any? I can see Angus McDonald's hand is up from Galleon Homes in Glastonbury. Do you touch his area, Colin? I mean, yes. He might be looking for some land. Angus, over to you, my friend.
Colin, really wonderful to hear your journey, and well done you for finding that source of income. I always think it's one thing to be good at delivering, but actually it's all about the finance. That is probably the key issue for a lot of SMEs. The question I was going to ask you is, at what point did you feel you had the momentum to be the business you are? And by that, I really mean the number of units or projects that you were delivering, and the point at which you get the business from being, if you use the analogy of a boat, going from or basically getting the business onto the plane. So the point at which you are sort of going forward with an upward momentum. How did you get to that point? That seems to be the critical issue for us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. If you think about the timing of when Lioncourt was formed, it could have been better forming it in 2006 and going straight into the banking crisis in 2008. But I think it's coming out at the other end of that is when we started to scale up, because we had to, like all of us, we had to batten down the hatches during the banking crisis, and buying land was not the best thing to do. It was all about liquidating assets to get the cash back into the business. So I think it's when we came out the other side. And what I did is I went back to the shareholders immediately the other side of the banking crisis, and I did a rights issue and asked them to put more money into the company, of which a lot of them did. That's the other beauty I should have mentioned, that having 80+ investors, if you want more money coming into the business, if you raise a rights issue, then if they don't all play, at least you're going to get some of them playing. But I think that's the time, and that's when we started to scale up, and we had more ability, and that was the beginning of the time when we got the revolving credit facility in place. So I think that's probably the time.
Thank you, very interesting. And without giving away too many secrets, did you have to give up a lot of the business to get your 85 investors on board?
Well, I suppose yeah, it's a great question. I don't mind being honest too. So with you, I'm sort of, depends on, I've got two classes of shares, but between 15 and 20% of the company is mine. So by default, 80% isn't. If I hadn't have done anything, you know, so really I've got a smaller part of a very big cake. But I have a feeling that instead of having a large cake that I've got now, I'd probably have a cupcake or something like that. And the cupcake would be very small, and I wouldn't have the same as the 20% I've got of the larger cake.
Could I just interject there? Because one of the things, Colin, and that I noticed, you know, one, you're very calm, very considered. Clearly, you've built something. But I guess your stress levels, when I look at people on the audience that I know are going through a lot, because you prepared to hand over ownership, you've trusted people to get the right people on board, you've decided you want a smaller part of a bigger cake than to keep the cake all for yourself, and therefore it only ever stays small, and you have all the stress and the worry to keep that together. I think it's a mindset, and what I found incredibly inspiring when we spent time together is that mindset of not being greedy, that mindset of wanting everyone to be successful along with you. and that it's not your success is seeing other people be successful and seeing the richness of them grow as human beings and to have a different type of price. So culture for me was one of the biggest things that's driven your journey to do that. Of course, you're doing well on it, but more importantly, so many other people are doing well as a result of the way in which you've set your business up. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, to release control is one of the hardest things as they grow a business that they have to come to terms with. And I think just looking, I can see Sarah Barraclough. I was with you up at Skipton last week. People think I get a nosebleed if I go past Watford, but it's not true, Sarah, is it? Did you want
to pick on me? I really did know you were going to pick on me.
I just saw your face and I thought I'm going to ask because I was with you last week up in Skipton. And yet again, what a wonderful business you've got up at Skipton, a family-run business. But did you want to ask Colin anything, Sarah? Because I'm sure you are one of the magnificent seven. I'm a house builder, so you know you're obviously involved in all of that. And as one of the females that certainly I respect hugely for what you do and how you've run your business, I just thought I'm going to pick on you, Sarah. Basically,
you are going to pick on me. Thank you for putting me on the spot, Edwin. Morning, Colin. Nice to meet you.
Morning, Sarah.
And thank you for sharing your story. It's amazing to hear. I guess again, because Edwin's put me on the spot, I was just taking some notes about what you were talking about, the culture, the quality, and how you've handed over a big piece of the pie. And I think it's, without going on to too much detail that I probably shouldn't share with the room, it's been very thought-provoking for what the next stage of my business, because the moment my father passed away 2020, very suddenly, really, and propelled us into in a good way, and if you've got to look at the positives, that propelled us into the next stage of our business. We're 40 next year. I've been with the company 22 years next month, so I'm not a newbie by any stretch, but it's still, there's an awful lot going on and an awful lot of things that I'm finding out that, you know, could have been better in the last however many years. My dad did an amazing job, but of course it's about bringing us into the next, as I say, the next generation. So I guess it's not really a question as such, but just everything you've shared today has helped me gather my thoughts or solidify them maybe into what is next. And I probably would welcome actually to just digest from today and maybe have a private conversation with you in the next couple of months. I think I would really appreciate that, bearing in mind the journey that we are moving on to in our 40th year. So sorry, it wasn't a question.
It was a great response, Sarah, and one of the reasons why I probably picked on you is knowing what I know about your business. And one of the people I'm delighted is that you're on the call for the reasons that I believe it can help shape your thinking going forward. And this forum for me is invaluable for people like you and everybody else when you hear from someone like Colin Cole putting a different perspective on things. I've got Andrew Rinaldi from Antler Homes. Morning, Andrew. How are you? You've got your hand up, Andrew. Well, if he did, he may have just gone for a break. So everyone's petrified now. I'm going to pick on them and ask them.
Edwin, can I just say one thing, just on basis of what Sarah said? Because I actually think, and I'd be delighted to have a conversation. One of the things that struck me with internally and externally, with the internal staff and those that have been given extra responsibility, I'm just amazed at how they've absorbed all that extra responsibility. And I know they do that better than I do. So I used to think that I knew best about everything, but I clearly don't. And every day they surprise me, and even people, more junior, and the way they do things. The other thing that struck me externally is the trust that we've got with our shareholders. And on the 12th of May, I go over to Dublin, going over to Dublin to do an annual presentation to all of our shareholders, which I love. And but it's the trust, really, because over the past 19 years, we've got to know each other quite well. And we've had a few pints of Guinness, as you do when you're over there. But it's that trust and togetherness. And because we're all so together, whenever I make the presentation, I tell them what's happened in the business, warts and all. So, if we've done something wrong, and I think if we did it and had the time again, we would do it better, then I tell them that. And the more I've gone through that process, the more it's bonded the investors together. And it won't perhaps surprise you that those investors that joined us 19 years ago are still with us. And that's odd, because in private equity land, they keep churning their money every five years. So this is a long-term play if you get it right. And I've got no one wanting to go. And the other thing I just quickly add is I've never ever paid them a dividend, ever. And I made that clear when I made the announcement, or had the discussions originally, that it's so capital intensive, a house building business, that I don't want to give any dividends away. So they'll get their outcome one day, but it won't be yet.
Yeah. Well, I just think, as again, there's two words that I probably left when we finished having breakfast. One was culture, the other was trust. And those are two key ingredients to business success, in my opinion, which clearly has happened in you. I believe we've got Andrew Rinaldi from Antler Homes back. Andrew, yes, are you with us?
Yeah, sorry, Edwin, can you hear me now? I was having some IT.
Okay. Yeah, morning, Andrew. Antler Homes, a lovely business in Bagshot. I think you build circular 75 to 100 units a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Over to you, Andrew, with your question.
Colin, thank you for a really interesting presentation. It's fascinating to hear what you've done with your business. If I can sort of bore you with three questions. The first one is why you chose to go to an Irish stockbroker to do your capital raise rather than someone in England or someone closer to home. Secondly, how much churn you've had in your investor base, particularly given your comment that you've not paid them a dividend. And then lastly, how easy it was to set up your growth share plan, because I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of us would love to do something similar, but I imagine it's a bit of hard work to get it done.
Yeah, okay. Well, taking the reason, the two initial investors I had were both Irish, both based in Dublin. And it just felt right to look at further investors from Dublin. And one of the reasons is that the Irish generally love asset-backed financing. So you're pushing, at the time I was pushing an open door to get investors. So it was those two things combined, really, the fact that I had the initial investors being Irish and the fact that I just felt that it was the right thing to do. And Goodbody was actually an outfit that I was aware of. So when I went to them, I did know a couple of stockbrokers there. So that was, but since that time, I have now got some UK-based investors, both based in London. So it's not all Irish, but mainly Irish. The churn has been virtually nil. We've had, one thing I did do a few years ago is I did, like the PLCs did, actually a cashback. I was worried about the land market about 4 years ago. I thought people were paying too much money for land. I had cash in my balance sheet, and the obvious thing to do was to go out and buy more land. I thought differently, in that if I buy land at that stage, I'm going to be overpaying for land. So I actually gave 20 million back to the shareholders. So I took the 20 million surplus cash I had off the balance sheet and I paid it back to the shareholders. Some of them decided to take it all and leave, and some decided just to take the profit that they'd made since we formed the company and leave the balance left in the business. But I had a job to get to the 20 million, if I'm honest, which was good because it meant that not everyone wanted to take their money out. So to answer, there's been your question, there's been no churn really in investors except the guys that went out. I have to say they were both over 80 and they just wanted their cash for their family. So it was that they had a good logic behind it. And then the setup, I think perhaps for me, I found it easier to set up the business because of my background. Having worked for a PLC, I was used to going to London, making presentations to the analysts in London, knowing how the stock market worked and knowing how that all worked, as well as having come up through the operational route. So I had a bit of both, where a lot of people come up through the operational route and never actually get exposed to what's happening in the city. So I did have that advantage, I suppose, in terms of setting it all up. But it's not, to be honest, that's nothing to be fearful of. That's quite a simple process. If you know how the industry works, the other bit is easy, I think. But I hope that's answered, Andrew, the 3 points you raised.
It's got most of them. I probably didn't explain the third question right, Colin, and that was, it was more about the equity, or I think you call it the growth shares that you've given all your employees, how difficult that was to set up.
That was actually quite straightforward. We just used our accountant to do our audit, and they put that in place. It's very tax effective as well for the employees, I would add. So we just had to make sure that we got the stages right, and each year, whatever our balance sheet value is at the end of each financial year, the value of each share is what we allocate the shares at. It's very straightforward.
Well, that's fantastic. Again, we really appreciate you sharing all this with us.
Thank you for that question. I've got Hugo Reid. Hugo, we spoke earlier.
We did.
So I know you've been waiting patiently. Over to you, Hugo.
Colin, thank you very much. We're at the other end, where you were 20 odd years ago. Having been going for 5 years, we're building bricks at the moment, are building probably about 25 to 30 homes a year, but we're growing very, very quickly. And really my question was along, if you were knowing what you know now and in today's market, in terms of gathering more equity, we're well financed, but we're getting to a stage where the growth requires, you know, that stage to greater pots of equity. And it's really what sort of tips or advice would you have in doing it now? Is it the same of trying to approach a stockbroker or a broker to get a larger group of people together? Or would you be targeting more a slightly more selective route at the moment? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think you could target that and try to I mean, I think it's relatively easy to identify key individuals. I think it might be easier to do that now than it was back then. But I'd probably do a 2-tier approach. I think someone like Goodbody in the UK, there must be some firms like that you could approach, and as well as you may know some wealthy individuals that might well want to. I think it's probably a combination of both, but my advice would be to spread it a bit and not to have people coming in that can take control, because I think probably you've clearly got the message that what I did was to spread the investment over so many people that I still run this business. This is my business to run rather than a group of external investors, which is a nightmare because you hear about that all the time when one of the investors who's got a majority can't take control. I think that the beauty of what the point you've raised is you're at a stage where I think you said 25 to 30 units. If you can scale up with some external investment, then that gets you onto a better banking facility straight away. At the moment, I assume you're doing scheme funding, and I remember all about that, and it's, you know, it's a nightmare. You can spend a lot of your time just worried about the banking situation, where with a revolving banking facility you know, that takes that headache away and all the issues that go with that. And it's just making sure that you maintain your investment and your control as part of those discussions with the investors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Just probably two things I'll mention. Colin will be joining me. As some of you may know, I co-chair the Regional Building Foundation, which is being incubated under the King's Foundation, working with USEN. We've got Meggie from the King's Foundation on the call. We have Building a Legacy, which is a lot of work we've been doing over the last few years. I've been doing with a gentleman called Ben Bolger, who's the Executive Director from the King's Foundation. And Angus is one of the spokes or steering group members there. So there is a meeting on the 24th of June, which Colin will be at with me. And I've got the privilege to have a number of SME house builders come. It's going to be in Northampton. It's a workshop. We've got the Duchy of Cornwall there. We've got CG Fry, that obviously were a fundamental partner in terms of Poundbury, which got involved with the Prince of Wales, then now our King. So that's on the 24th. If any of you SME house builders would really like to be part of that, just drop me an email. The other thing I'm going to do, Colin, before I thank you, is Colin wants to see me again, bizarrely, so I'm coming down to see some of his developments. It was going to be tomorrow, but I can't do that. What I was going to suggest, with your blessing, Colin, not that I'm going to bring 50 people down with me to see your development, but when I get the date, if there are some of you that would like to seriously have a chat with Colin, if we organised an afternoon, Colin, you and I can discuss the numbers, but I'm super excited to feel the culture, to see the people, and obviously to see the quality homes that you build. So I will be looking to put a day or afternoon aside to do that, and I would be delighted for several of you if you wanted to accompany me when I get the date. So if you're interested in either of those, I think everyone's got my details, or you can liaise with Anna, who obviously runs Hera Communications, who really looks after me more than she should these days. But thank you. So I just wanted to do that. And could we all just perhaps show our appreciation to Colin? Thank you, Colin, on behalf of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Well, we're a little bit later than scheduled, but I think for very good reasons, because I think this is key. Now, if someone says they can give you zero bills and low carbon homes, who wouldn't want to listen to somebody like that? Well, we have a gentleman, Nigel Banks, Technical Director from Octopus Energy. Nigel, I'm going to keep it brief. I'm going to hand straight over to you, Nigel. One of the things I would say is Nigel is very keen to work with SME house builders. He sees this forum as an opportunity to access a large number in one go. Collectively, we represent one of the top 5 volume national house builders. Even on this forum, if we looked at the SME market as a total, we're twice the size of the largest volume house builder in the UK. The challenge for a lot of companies, manufacturers and whatever, is access to SME house builders, which is really difficult because you're not in some directory like the top 20, 30 builders. So Nigel, thank you for joining the call. I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself and to run through Octopus Energy, what you do, how you do it, and why you're keen to work with SME builders going forward.
Good morning, everyone, and great to be here. So I'm Nigel Banks. I'm Technical Director at Octopus. I also have a background in and I know some of you from some of the HBF and HBC forums. I helped co-found Ilka Homes in 2016-17 and grew that very rapidly until unfortunately came to a pretty disastrous end, going to administration in about 2 years ago, this month actually, or next month. And so understand some of that rapid growth journey and challenges. But one of the things which, prior to that, I was at Keepmoat as well. And one of the things that we always tried to do was build more sustainable housing. And I know that a lot of you are trying to do that, but we really struggled to get extra value for those homes. And one of the things I did at Ilka was partner with Octopus Energy to see if we could turn a zero carbon home into a guaranteed zero bill home. And that was sort of 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, and that's now what we do. So I'm going to pull up some slides. Hopefully you can see those now.
Yeah.
And walk you through what it is, how it works, and if it's of interest. Really keen to speak to any of you around how we could partner with yourselves to make this happen. So we are now able to offer and guarantee at least 10 years of no energy bills for new homes that build to our specification. It starts off as 5 years. We now extend it out to a 10-year guarantee. And the expectation is in year 11 and 12 and 13 and beyond, there would also be a zero bill. So it's an ongoing zero energy bill home. But we, as Octopus Energy, we guarantee that and contract with the house builder that we will offer that for at least 10 years. Try and flick through. So again, hopefully you're all familiar with Octopus Energy. It's a pretty big brand now. But again, that only started 9 years ago. So Octopus Energy was founded 9 years ago by Greg Jackson. It's now got operations in 32 countries, and is valued at 9 billion. So it's an incredible growth journey. And a lot of the things that Colin was talking about around trust, empowerment, all 12,500 members of staff are shareholders in the business. And a lot of that really echoed the experience I've got at Octopus. And one of the things that I think is incredible about Octopus is the utter devotion and love that's put on customers and the focus on the end consumer, and also the pace at which Octopus operates. We don't operate a monthly financial reporting. It's a weekly update on all key numbers, and that really drives a massive energy and momentum. But there's also no HR department, no IT department, or the company of 12,500 people. So you can keep that SME feel in a enormous business. So I thought it was interesting to reflect on that. So zero bills is effectively one of what we sort of see now as sort of three standards that are emerging or have emerged that people are looking or going to have to be building to. So we think potentially tomorrow, next week or two, the Future Home Standard will be announced in a bit more detail, and that is going to require house builders to build with heat pumps and with solar PV, as much solar PV as can generally fit on probably one side of a roof, which is a big shift for the industry. I know some people will be building with heat pumps, particularly in off-gas areas. And the other key standard that's been around for a long time that I've tried building to, and a lot of people have done some sort of trials to build to, is the Passivhaus standard, which is a German standard requiring virtually no heating. So the insulation and air tightness is extremely high. What we've effectively done in creating zero bills is we haven't got a defined fabric specification. We haven't got a defined air tightness level. It's very much what's required to get to a zero energy bill. And that generally is an all-electric home with a lot of solar PV and a battery. And I'll explain that was probably commercially unviable certainly 10 years ago and 20 years ago when I was building homes at Keepmoat, but certainly even 5 years ago the cost of that technology was too high. That's now very much accessible technology, and we are now building with a number of builders. I think someone, Adam from Taken might be on the call. We've built with some of the PLCs have dipped their toe. I think culturally they've been quite risk averse to doing much more than dipping their toe. I think the builders that have really embraced zero bills and are really seeing the benefits of those are the ones that have actually gone at a reasonable amount of scale and put some marketing momentum and sort of lent on the Octopus brand as well as their own brand to showcase and bring in a new client group or customer group as well. So Hill Group have got that site up in Newport, Essex, near Saffron Walden, all 89 homes, zero bills. Bottom left, Thakin, we've got a site in Burgess Hill where 48 of the 102 are zero bills, so about half the site. And what we are seeing and what the house builders are telling us is people are achieving higher valuations and higher sales rates, typically around the £20,000 to £30,000 mark for a zero bills home against a building regs or even a zero carbon home. But interestingly, people are selling faster, and in the current market, it's been a good way of pulling customers in. Julian Rooney, the chief sales officer at Thagum, did a nice interview with a podcast talking about it's a real pull for customers into the site. It's brought in an older demographic as well as a younger demographic. I think they were surprised by the older demographic. People are looking to downsize, new home, no mortgage, no bills, and live in retirement in comfort of knowing everything's sort of covered. And the other key area we're seeing massive uplift in interest is in the build to rent sector. So if on some of your sites if you've got some bigger sites where you are looking to get a build to rent funding to acquire some of the properties, we're working with a lot of the big and some of the slightly smaller build to rent funds who are looking to recover that extra cost of investment, because there is a cost of installing this equipment, which I'll talk through. But they can recover that and increase their yields effectively by sharing the benefits. So they're putting the rents up by sort of £50 to £100 a month, and the tenants are saving £150 to £200 a month on their typical bills. So it's a win-win for both parties, and they're then able to advertise it as a bills included home. So we've now got around 200 homes built. There's about 1,500 in build, and we're trying to get over 100,000 by 2030. We are taking this global as well. So Octopus is operating global. We don't do anything slowly. We think something's going to work, we roll it out. So we're live in New Zealand and Germany, and we'll be in France and Italy and the US hopefully later this year. So the way it works is we need to be able to smart control a heat pump and a battery and have lots of solar panels on the roof to be able to make enough revenue from selling energy back to the grid and providing services to the grid to offset the cost of pulling energy in from the grid. So this is a profitable tariff for us. So we can make money as Octopus Energy without billing the customer. So we take the full payments for exporting the energy back to the grid and providing services to the grid from using the battery and the heat pump. And that generates enough revenue to offset the costs of importing energy to cover the heat pump and appliance loads. It doesn't include EV charging currently. We can't physically fit enough solar panels on the roof space typically to do that, but that's what we are looking to do in the future. And there is a fair use cap, so there's a couple of sort of key caveats. So it's not limitless free energy. So if you are already building with heat pumps or looking at sites with heat pumps and some solar, the extra over cost of adding a bit more solar and a home battery really makes this commercially quite attractive. And for the end consumer, they move into the house, sign up to the tariff, give us permission to control the battery, and then live their life normally. Control the thermostat on the wall, use their house normally, and they just get billed zero every month. If they go over the fair use cap and have very high energy use, we bill them for the energy beyond that threshold at the standard rate. And their EV charging is billed at 7 pence kilowatt hour, which works out at £200 for 10,000 miles. So very, very cheap charging. So I say we are seeing faster sales and increased sales values. Typically, I say that sort of £20,000 mark. Not everyone has achieved that, I would say. We've done a couple of pilot homes where people have had offers at a high level, but those sales have fallen through, and in a very slow market, they've dropped their price just to get the sale through. So there hasn't always been there, but generally people are achieving a sort of a £15,000 to £25,000 sales uplift on sales. We have had a couple of sites that have gone through on Greenbelt where they've been a balance of planning by offering zero bills, guaranteed zero carbon homes as part of their planning submission, which may also be of interest. For the consumer, they are getting a home which saves them £150, £200 a month. We expect that property value that they're paying at a premium to retain and then be able to sell on for a premium, because they're not having to that home will be required to retrofit in the future. But one of the really important things that's come through is sort of comfort and peace of mind. People not having to worry about bills going up and down, and that has really brought people to zero bills that otherwise perhaps wouldn't have done. So that we are seeing that yield uplift in build to rent as well. And something we've launched last week at UK Reef was a new solution for social housing. So in social housing, they aren't able to raise the rent by £20 to £200 a month. So we've created a new product. I've just snuck in the bottom corner of that slide, called Tenant Power, which allows us to split the benefits of the solar battery system between the tenant and the landlord. So the tenant gets a fixed discount, so not a zero bill, but maybe a half price bill. And the difference between the half price and the zero bill goes back to the landlord as a revenue stream in social housing. That could also work in private rent as well. So there isn't a defined fabric spec, but generally we find any new build home with a simple roof kind of works. So rooms in the roof and hip roofs really struggle to get enough solar on, and I know that often to get through planning and some architectural details and are often desirable, but that is probably the big constraining factor we have to get to the zero bill spec. We then have preferred heat pump manufacturers. We have the main manufacturers, including our own heat pump we make. But then you need less solar if you have one we can smart control. We do require that we have a battery that we can smart control. Typically, that's a Tesla Powerwall or a Give Energy battery. They're about £5,000-6,000 to buy. So it is a significant upgrading cost. Installed, it's coming in about £7,000 or £8,000. But those prices are coming down significantly. And then EV chargers, you have to fit an EV charger anyway now as part of building regs. We need one which we can smart control and sub-meter the billing. And there's a few other bits around not having gas, and the customer needs to be on internet connectivity for us to control the battery. So just on the sort of cost point, I think just to flag, the cost of kit really has transformed massively in the last 10 years. This when I actually put 20 solar panels and 20 forklift truck batteries in my house 15 years ago, and it did cost me not quite 40 grand, but a lot of money. And the cost of this kit has massively dropped. So the material cost for 20 solar panels and a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery has dropped from sort of 40 grand 15 years ago to about £7,000 today, and it looks a lot better. So those are in roof 450 watt panels on a site in St Neots on that picture on the right hand side. Those panels only cost £50 each for a 450 watt all black glass aluminium solar panel that generates 450 watts. And anyone that's been on a turbo train or a bike will know that trying to generate 450 watts human powered is almost impossible to hold for more than sort of 10-15 seconds. And the Tesla Powerwall is sort of suitcase sized battery, can fit on the side of the house. It's only about 192 mil thick, and includes the inverter, so you haven't got to put an inverter in a loft. You put the solar panels on the roof, run the cable down to the Powerwall, and then into the consumer unit. And I think the cost could drop even further still. These are very much, there's question marks at the bottom of the slide for a reason. So this is not Octopus predictions. This is just where cost could go. So interesting, yeah. So 20 solar panels is only about £1,000 to buy. The roof tray is about £1,000 to buy. You're saving about £1,000 in not buying concrete roof tiles, and about £5,500 for the battery. Added to that, you've got labour installation, but you're not fitting roof tiles, you're fitting solar panels. The labour cost shouldn't be significantly higher. There are now 510 watt panels being produced this year in the same space of a sort of 400 watt panel. So the panels are getting better and better and better. And amazingly, this I've actually bring down the cost of this car on the right side. So in China, you can buy a BYD Seagull car for £5,700, and that includes a 30 kilowatt hour battery. So a 30 kilowatt hour battery, which is sort of 2.5 times the size of battery we need, is £5,700, which is the same price as a Tesla Powerwall, and you get a car that comes with it for free. You've got the wheels, everything else that comes with making a car. So that pro rata would roughly halve the cost of a battery today. So there's definitely headroom in the home battery costs, which could mean the cost uplift in a couple of years' time on the sites that you're looking at building to this sort of standard may not be £10,000-12,000 it is for installed cost today, could be down at sort of £5,000-10,000 of cost for a £20-30 uplift in sales value. So we think the economics are really quite impressive. And the sort of thing that we are saying to people is, you're going to have to start looking at this future home standard in the next few weeks, which will require you to build with a heat pump and solar PV. And we are now working with a lot of the SAP assessors to do your energy calcs. So at the same time, they can look at what is the zero bills spec upgrade that's required. So can you fit more solar on the roof? Where would you put your home battery? probably outside, and have an option to potentially upgrade or potentially build to the zero build spec at the same time. So sort of one thing to go away thinking about, if nothing else, is when looking at your new house types or your new developments that might be to the Future Home Standard, and looking at where you're going to put a cylinder, where you're going to put a heat pump and solar, have a look at potentially asking your assessor to run a zero builds assessment at the same time. We have got a fairly straightforward process. We don't charge for doing assessments. You pay for the equipment that's installed, and you get any upside that comes from it. We typically do a site plan review to sort of pick up the house types that may be problematic. Your SAP assessor runs the calcs. They can now actually run the assessment themselves if they're accredited, and your solar designer that we design your solar panels can design that spec. We have a relatively straightforward contract with a shed, which is a framework agreement. Every site that comes through acts as a schedule, and then we then help on onboarding and marketing as well, and have a marketing pack that the house builders can work with. So it's a relatively straightforward process. I've got a couple of adverts on the end just to flag if people are interested in this sort of tech. We've got a massive tech summit we're hosting in a month's time in Battersea, where we've got Brian Cox, some quite interesting speakers. We've got someone who's commander of the International Space Station as well. So a really mixed audience, but we focus on tech and where EVs, batteries, all this stuff's going, if you're interested in that. And from a point of view of finance, that was mentioned earlier on, just quickly added this on. If you're not familiar with the Greener Homes Alliance, that the first phase funded about 20 developments. There's a second phase that's going live this summer with another £150 million worth of funding. There's a 1% discount if you achieve 4 of the bullet points on the right, and a 2% discount if you achieve 6 of those bullet points, and zero builds is one of those bullet points. So you may well already be building to those standards. If you are, there may be some attractive development finance through Octopus, which is, and Homes England through the real estate and investment arm as well. I'll stop there. Hopefully that's of interest. Get in touch with me directly, or we have a generic zero bills email there as well.
Thank you, Nigel. I can see that Angus has got his hand up there. One question that always hits me is, it's fantastic, and if someone, if you're getting a mortgage, are mortgage lenders going to take into account this? Because a first-time buyer, or even if you're an empty nester looking to buy, if your mortgage payments can reflect this in terms of you getting 5 times your salary or whatever it might be now from 3 or whatever, then that can actually make it more affordable for people, because the mortgage lenders know their running costs are going to be lower. I'm not aware that they are being receptive, even though I know there's been discussions, but I would have thought Octopus Energy would be in quite a position of strength to have those discussions with some of the major mortgage lenders.
Yeah, we met with all of the major lenders 18 months ago, and they have all committed to do something in this space that takes account of affordability. We very quickly got a zero bills product from Perenna, who are a sort of have a European long-term fixed mortgage product, which is probably not what most people would go for. We are close with a couple of the major high street banks to them launching a product this year. They haven't launched a bespoke product, but what I would say is I don't believe on the Hill site, the Thacombe site, the Verto sites, the other sites, the Bellway sites either, that people have struggled to get a mortgage for a zero bills home, including the premium for the zero bills element. What we're not seeing directly is if you haven't got a bill, that should unlock sort of £30,000 extra affordability. And actually, and that potentially means the homes are more affordable. If you charge £20,000 uplift and you've got £30,000 extra affordability, you could actually bring in people that perhaps couldn't quite afford the product in the first place. So they are all working on it, is what I'd say. The challenge they've got is changing their IT systems is not like changing the IT systems at Octopus, which are done very quickly and very fast. And also they are looking at bringing out a joint new build and retrofit product. So we are doing zero builds as a retrofit, particularly for recently built homes. and that opens up a much bigger book of properties to go after. So at the moment, the sort of 2,000 homes in construction isn't enough for them to say we're going to spend a load of time changing our IT system for a new product. But I think once the Future Home Standard is out, a few of the people are looking at having an all-electric home tariff, and we are talking to some of the lenders around a beyond EPC interest rate reduction as well.
All right, thank you, Nigel. Well, we've got 3 questions. I've got Angus, James Parkin, and then Chris Carr. Angus.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating, and good on Octopus for doing this. 3 quick questions. Roughly what size kilowatts do you need in terms of solar panels? Roughly what size kilowatt in terms of battery on an average house? But more importantly, is there now an integrated solar panel system that can avoid you having to put tiles on the roof and therefore cover the whole of a roof if you design your house to meet the size specification? And if so, who would that be?
Yeah, so as a rough rule of thumb, it's the sort of floor area of the house divided by 4 or 5 is the number of panels you in the roof. So typically on a 80 square meter house, you'd need 16 to 20 panels. So it is a lot. So typically we're putting solar on both sides of the roof. East and west, north and south, you get the same output. It's both sides of the roof typically. So on a bigger house, 160 square meters, you might be up at 30 to 40 panels. So it is a lot of solar, but it's worth noting that those panels don't cost that much more than the concrete tiles that or if you're putting slates on a roof, it's probably cheaper to tile in solar panels than it is with slates. So yeah, you can bring that down with better fabric. You can bring it down with wastewater heat recovery or underfloor heating. Actually helps a little bit as well. But generally, that's the sort of rough kilowatt. So and yeah, in terms of turning that into kilowatt peak, it's so I guess the 3-bed is probably about 8 kilowatts, 9 kilowatts. We only need a 5 kilowatt grid export connection. So even if you're putting 30 panels or 40 panels on a big detached 5-bed house, which might be 12 kilowatts of solar, you only need a 5 kilowatt grid connection, an export connection, and you probably need a 4 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt grid connection for your heat pump and EV charger anyway. In terms of battery size, typically we're using the 13.5 kilowatt hour Tesla Powerwall or the Give Energy battery. In the past, we have done some with a 10 kilowatt hour battery, and some people have looked at using 2 10 kilowatt hour batteries as well, so that works. And then in terms of doing a full roof, there are 2 or 3 solar systems available now. There's a couple called Viridian, Cambridge based. They're slightly more expensive, but all aluminium flashings, which is very nice, very good. They have got details that can go to the ridge, into the gutter and to the eaves. You'll need to leave a gap at the party wall and have non-combustible on a semi-detached property or terrace property. You need to have a row of non-combustible there. GSE, a French company, they make a plastic tray which is much more cost effective, and full NHBC compliance. A company called UPower, UPOWA, are doing a lot of work with, I think they're doing the Thacum site, for example. They go into the gutter up to the ridge, and can go out with an aluminium flashing detail to the eaves. And there's another one called Sunroof, which we haven't done anything with yet, but I've got similar solutions. So if you can make your roof the size of an iteration of number of solar panels, then yes, you can. No one's quite done that yet that I've seen in the UK, but there are good examples of that being done in on the continent, particularly in the Netherlands. Full solar roofs in the Netherlands are actually more, not common, but there's quite a few examples of that in the Netherlands.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you for that. What's interesting, just picking it up, is because obviously I've got contacts with a lot of companies that are currently using Octopus Energy, and I'm sure the likes of Adam Eaton, who oversees supply chain procurement at Thacum, there's things that I know he would be happy to share, Angus, with others, should that be, because obviously there's a learning curve to go through, and as a small SME, it's quite a lot of exposure and uncertainty, unknowns, where you could benefit from people that have gone through that experience that could share it. So again, to everyone on the audience, on the call, there's things that perhaps if there is interest, I can make sure that you know that learning can be picked up quickly from others. We've got James Parkin. Hi, James. Haven't seen you for a little while. And then I've got Chris Carr, president from the Federation of Master Builders, who's put his hand down, but I'm sure he will ask something. Chris is never quiet on these calls. So over to you, James, and then I'll hand over to Chris Carr.
Hi, Nigel. Nice to see someone from Octopus. We've been relatively technically forward, and I was looking at your zero bill some time ago, but I think it might have not matured that much then, so we didn't manage to get anywhere. Just a couple of questions, and it was interesting to hear Angus. And just to add to your list, Angus, there's a company called Solfit that do in-roof panels. They sit somewhere between GCE and Viridian price-wise. We've been using them for about 4 years now, and not on one of our plots, but at a building I built at home, I have done a full solar panel roof, eaves to ridge and verges, etc. And I've got 50 odd kilowatt hours of batteries, and yeah, it's something I'm quite okay with. I suppose just two questions really, Nigel. Do you have any preferred numbers of plots? You know, we've got sites coming up where I might want to revisit this, I think. And, you know, I've got some small sites at 9 units, but, you know, equally we do up to 200-300 unit sites. And do you see it as preferable to have a mix on site? Or, you know, are you willing to go to 100, 200 unit sites and it's all in, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so we're pretty flexible on that. So we've done one-off houses, sort of 2 or 3 plots up to,
yeah.
We've now looking at a site of, well, we're looking at some of these large urban extensions and some of the large landowners around, potentially making the whole sites zero bills. So yeah, we haven't got a minimum size. We haven't got a maximum size. The one thing in terms of number of plots, I think we are wary of not doing anything uber mansion size, sort of like anything sort of 250, 300 square meters plus.
Right.
Swimming pools, saunas, hot tubs and stuff like that
yeah,
are going to drive massive energy use. We are sort of saying no to at the moment as well. So yeah, standard housing of any shape and size, and yeah.
No,
so, yeah.
Good. Also, I'm seeing my picture freeze, whether you can hear me.
Yep, I can hear you.
You did mention you're looking for a 5 kilowatt export, which would mean it's on a G99 ticket.
Yep.
Are you coming across issues from utility providers? Because I certainly know in our area, you know, if I turn up to them and say, right, I want, you know, 50 units on G99 with 5 kilowatt export, they'll all start scratching their heads a bit at me and moaning. Are you getting problems with the utilities on that?
So I think I've probably done 30 or 40 sites. Only one of them has had an issue with the G99, and that has actually turned out to be an issue on supply for the homes to be on heat pumps in the first place. So the application was redone gas, and there wasn't enough supply for the homes. So we have there's a couple of things to be aware of. So on the hill site, where all 90 homes, 89 homes are zero bills, the cables needed to be slightly larger for the voltage drop from the homes that were furthest away. So there was about 20 grand uplift on site cost across those 90 homes. So that's a couple of £100 a home. But actually, from a point of connection point of view, we're generally seen as helping the grid. So because we've got the batteries and the heat pumps and the EVs under smart control, we're putting power back on the grid when there's a shortage at peak time, and we're trying to pull power off peak time. And for example, this weekend there was a massive excess of solar and wind because it was windy and sunny. The price of energy was negative for most of the day on Sunday, and actually us pulling power and filling up batteries and charging cars and running hot waters tanks at that time is helpful. So we are working with the DNOs to simplify that process. SSEN have announced they're bringing forward an accelerated process for low carbon homes with smart control tech to accelerate grid connection processes. defined what that is. They've announced it, but haven't defined the exact process yet. So I think it's certainly something that we haven't had a major issue with, but we're aware that if you've got a gas site and you're looking to move to heat pumps, you potentially have got an issue anyway. If you've already got a heat pump site, you're probably okay.
We've got some coming up which will be heat pump, and also some affordable sites where it might be something we might want to try in conjunction with the purchaser. But I'll probably drop you a LinkedIn if that's okay. I think it'd be useful to have a conversation. But yeah, it's something we've been looking at.
Thank you, James, and thanks, Nigel. I think Chris Carr, are you all good?
My mum said if I can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So I'll leave Nigel with it.
Is that why you never talk to me, Chris?
It helps, but yeah. No, I just have a few. Yeah.
I am surprised because Roger Jelly has got about 30 years younger. I've just seen Joe Jelly now. So, yeah, my gosh. Or is it Roger just managed to get himself 30 years younger, Joe? Because you've got your hand up.
There's no filter that good, Edwin, I'm afraid to say. Though we wish we did have one. Nigel, thanks ever so much for the presentation. You know, fantastic concept. Really like the idea of it. But just touching back on your point earlier, just in terms of the maximum size of house that this can realistically work on. We're based down in the southeast in Guildford. We sort of more bespoke develop a larger housing. So I was just intrigued because you sort of touched on 250 to 300 square meter houses is something you'd edge away from, and that's sort of the typical size of our housing scheme. So just interested to see what your viewpoint is and whether there's any scope for the future where those sort of houses could be incorporated.
Let's have a look at it. I'd say I think what we're aware of when we get to that sort of size of homes, they're often coming with pools and saunas and hot tubs and that they are major drawers of energy. So we are doing one which I think is about 250 square meters, but they're actually putting in a separate supply for their swimming pool and sauna and steam room and all that sort of extra bit they're building on the side of the house. So they can have the house to zero bills and having that on a separate supply, partly because that keeps them on 2 single-phase supplies rather than going to a 3-phase supply. Also, the kit gets a lot more expensive on 3-phase. So that's the other thing to be aware of. But happy to have a look. And yeah, if it's... we're very aware that when you get to that size of house, the energy use can often spike with other things like that.
Yeah, it does. You know, if you've got a 1,500 square foot house, it goes up actually exponentially once you get to 2,000, 3,000. So we're aware of that as well. But okay, well, something that we can maybe look at.
Send some stuff through. Happy to have a look. See what we
Thank you, Joe. I think we've probably just got time for one more question. I think Angus, you had your hand up again. Did you want to ask a final question?
It's a very quick one. Sorry to be me again. Nigel, just a quick one. Have you looked at all at doing any ground mount solar that would on a scheme that would actually be going sort of to cover the whole scheme and how that would operate? Because quite often in rural locations we have space for some ground mount, which might be a more efficient way of delivering the power.
Yeah, and I can pick up on Peter Lacey's question around communal batteries. So we are doing a trial of a sort of community battery on a microgrid, where current on that trial the solar is on the roof of the houses, but the solar could be in an adjacent field as a solar farm as well. We are doing a trial of that because for various reasons it adds quite a bit of extra complexity, partly on legals, but also on ways of balancing the grid. But there we've got a shipping container size battery for 113 homes. That's with GS8 in Epping. So there's 113 homes. One 20-foot shipping container that contains a 2 megawatt hour battery. And then there's solar across the roof of all the homes, and all of those homes are getting zero bills. But we have to set up something called an energy services company that the customers all sign up to. They can still leave and go and to another supplier, but they leave the ESCO and they lose the benefit of the zero bills and the battery. So there is a model to do that, and that would work with adjacent fields. the GS8 site is on site now. I think the first homes are due to be sold in September. We wanted to see how that goes this year. If that goes well and we can manage the extra risks we take on with that, then we are looking at expanding that. So if you've got a site where you'd like to look at it, we're happy to have a look, but we're not sort of committing to doing lots of these yet until we've seen how this first one goes. But you're happy to have a look, and that would allow you to have the PV not on the roof of the homes. And if you've got homes with lots of dormers and hips and chimneys and other features, that obviously means you can put the solar elsewhere. So yeah, we are looking at that, and there are people who are providing a service. I know a company called SNRG are looking to install and fund the kit, but then you only get a small discount on the bill, so you don't get a zero bill, and the legals of that get complicated with people having leaseholds over the roof and the batteries, etc. But there are people doing similar things in this space as well. It's not just us on the microgrid options.
Nigel, thank you ever so much for. Sorry, go on, Anna.
Edlin, just very quickly on that, GS8 is actually one of my clients, so I know the microgrid site very well. If anybody, just to echo Edwin's point, if anybody wanted to talk to Josh and Ben, who run that house building company, I'd be really happy to set that up, because they are kind of pioneering on that side, and really happy to talk about their journey and what they're doing, because they want to kind of improve the wider level of energy efficiency.
Thank you, Anna. I was just going to conclude. We're 1 minute away. I want to finish on time. It's unusual for me to be punctual. But thank you, Nigel, on behalf of all. I think the presentation was excellent. Just to say, we are going to be launching the R&B developers website. So as we've recorded this, for those many that have said, look, can't be on it, can it be recorded? We're doing that. There will be a little bit of background. We're going to be building that up, and that, again, the website, Anna at Hero Communications is going to be doing that for me. It's your website, it's your forum. We're going to provide case studies, various things that I'm involved with the APG, with the King's Foundation, with a range of different things, to give you access to stuff that maybe you ordinarily would have to pay for, and maybe create that community, that ecosystem on a local basis for SME builders. So as I said, I couldn't have imagined over 5 years ago at the start of lockdown that I'd still be doing this. And if anything, it's grown and grown and becoming more a powerful voice, within the industry, but probably as importantly at number 10 and number 11. And the survey that you've all done recently, I think over 120 of you complete the survey. That report we will have later on this week, which will be going to government, and it is absolutely making a significant difference. They see yourselves as a voice that they can't access. Typically, other organisations have a blend, whereas AS is completely focused on SME house builders, and it's a very informal forum, as you know. And I think from having it that way, we get some real genuine feedback, and there's no agendas. Anna and my agenda is purely to serve you, to facilitate and coordinate these forums with interesting guest speakers where there's topics that are relevant and pertinent to what you need to know. So again, please let me know if there's any particular subject matter you would like covered at our next forum. We will probably be having Gareth from the Bank of England on a forum coming up. He's agreed to do that quarterly. I've got an event in October, I think it's the 2nd, where he is going to be a guest speaker, and many of you will come to a whole day's event, which we're going to brand the R&B forum, and that is a shooting innovation event all day, all evening. I think many of you are aware of it. Many of you have come over the last few years, courtesy of me, but that's something we'll be doing. So I want it to be face-to-face as well as virtual. We're also, Anna, and particularly Linda, is going to be organising maybe an event at the Houses of Parliament where we may well be meeting with housing ministers. Linda, I'm going to let you close this then, because your finger's up there pointing at me.
Sorry, I was trying. Our next APG will be on the 17th of June. It's at 11. If anybody wants further details, it's backed by our partner Close Brothers as well. It was originally going to be, if you like, a normal event, but now that we've had these recent announcements, plus we've also had several SMEs and organisations get in touch asking if they could bring, if you like, their evidence or their case to the fore. So we're going to try and showcase and hopefully get at least a minister there as well as the APG members. So if anybody wants further details of that, please, we'll put it out there, but please do contact us as well. And we'll also send you details of the new announcements that went out yesterday and are coming out today for your comments. Thank you.
And they've got a very, very important guest speaker speaking for about 10 minutes, haven't they, Linda, on the 17th of June?
Possibly. We'll see. Keep your
I'm
guessing.
referring to myself, Linda. I think you were thinking of someone far more important.
No. I was trying to shoehorn you in because you've got so many places to visit. We're trying to build the minister around you. Would you believe it's getting more and more difficult?
I know I tried to get it for 10 o'clock because that suited my schedule, but I've committed to Anna. I will be there at 11. I'll probably need to leave at 15:15. So everyone can be comforted if they do choose to come, that they'll only have to listen to me for no more than 10 minutes. So there's a comfort there. Look, on behalf of us all, Colin, Nigel, fantastic, very different, but incredible chats, presentations. Nigel, obviously, you're going to be joining me for the whole day in October, and I know you're going to speak there so people can meet you in person. I want you to champion and support me in championing the house builders, so I'm delighted you're there. Colin, I may bring an army up to Worcester to see you. I'm sure I'll have a lot of people saying, can I come on that visit with you? I'm sure if I get a bus load and we've got a coach load there, I'm sure you'll cope with it, and you might forgive me. But look, we will have a group. You and I can talk subsequently. But on behalf of us all, a massive thank you for your time. And also a thank you from Anna and myself for you all joining this, some of you nearly 5.25 years ago, because it's become this because of those of you that have stayed faith, have wanted to make it what it is. It's your forum. It's not Anna's and mine. We are just driving the engine for you. And I want you to help continue to shape it for us, because you shaping it will make a difference to you, and it'll have far greater impact with government and other external bodies that we are championing on your behalf. So on behalf of us all, thank you very much, everybody. And have a good rest of the day. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.